Story 1. Walking back to your table after using the bathroom in a crowded restaurant feels as if everyone is watching you like you're on a runway. Story 2. When a cashier hands me my change and I drop a coin, everything feels like a bank heist gone wrong. Story 3. If I hear someone raising their voice or becoming irate or aggressive, even if it is not directed toward me and involves strangers, it makes my anxiety skyrocket. Story 4. Walking in the wrong direction and turning around dramatically as if it was always part of the plan. Story 5. When I think about Earth and the universe for too long and how it is a floating rock in the middle of space with a sun and moon, I feel nervous about the infinite nature of the universe and the possibility that we may not be the only life forms. Story 6. Being late for anything. Class? Not going anymore. Important meeting? A call in sick. The only exceptions are doctor's appointments. Story 7. Returning items at a store makes me anxious. I wonder if the staff will question me or believe my reason for the return. Will I get my money back? Or have I made a mistake? I can feel a line forming behind me, adding to my stress. The retail staff and waiting customers are probably annoyed with me. Now I have to leave empty-handed, but I assure you, I am innocent. Story 8. I need to talk to you later. Actually, you need to talk to me immediately, or else I am not going to make it. Story 9. People are holding their phones or cameras over the guardrail in high places, such as tourist church towers. Story 10. I cannot quite explain it, but when someone compliments my appearance, I start feeling overly self-aware and uncomfortable. I want to live in ignorance regarding how I am perceived by others. Story 11. Being late is something I don't understand. I can't grasp the concept of being fashionably late to any meeting or event. For example, my sister always arrives late to airports, which I find terrifying. I prefer to arrive super early, perhaps relaxing in a lounge while waiting. Story 12. Early work shifts can be challenging. If I have late shifts, I can sleep well the day before. However, when I have to be at work at 7 in the morning, I always worry that my alarm won't go off and I will be late. Being late feels like the end of the world. Consequently, I struggle to fall asleep the evening before, which increases my stress. I worry that if I don't get enough sleep, I might make mistakes at work the next day. This cycle of stress and worry makes it even harder to sleep. Story 13. Running into the same people repeatedly in a grocery store feels like, I swear I'm not following you. Story 14. Receiving a message from my ex-wife. It's usually nothing bad, but I was so used to always being at fault for something when we were married that it's a hard mindset to break. Story 15. Cuticle trimming. Whether I do it at home or have it done at a nail salon, I try to avoid it, to be honest. Story 16. Entering a store when you are the only one there and just want to look around can feel uncomfortable, especially when the cashier looks at you oddly. Story 17. Sending a flirtatious text to my husband and then panicking that I may have accidentally sent it to our family group chat, even though I definitely did not. Story 18. I have a car issue. I need to make a phone call and describe the problem without knowing which parts are broken or defective. As someone who knows very little about cars, it is frustrating every time I have to go to the auto shop. I feel helpless and taken advantage of after every repair. Story 19. Birds blinking, especially chickens, freak me out. I don't know what it is, but just stay away from me. Story 20. I often worry that my runny nose could be a sign of something serious. As a child, I suffered from nosebleeds, but that is no longer an issue for me. However, the memory has remained. Story 21. Breathing. I notice I hold my breath often and become lightheaded. When I realize it, I try to concentrate on breathing, which shouldn't be necessary, and it feels awkward. Sometimes I experience a panic attack. Story 22. I feel rude when I go into a bakery and start with, hello. They aren't machines, but I don't want to act strange by asking how their day is, especially with people behind me. It makes me anxious either way. Story 23. Hearing my doorbell ring when I didn't expect anyone gives me a heart attack, especially if they knock as well. Why are you knocking too? I'm not answering. Story 24. When the large rollers that compact asphalt turn on their vibrating mechanisms, it mirrors what I feel inside during a major panic attack. I have gone to therapy for over 10 years to manage these episodes without medication, but when faced with that outside force, I absolutely need to escape. Story 25. I dislike the sensation of food touching my throat. It makes me fear that I might start choking. Story 26. When the cashier gives me my change in coins and places them down, there's a long line behind me, and then she says, "Next," even though I haven't picked up all my change yet. Story 27. Having my eyes closed in a car with my face by the window, I feel the shadows and sunlight flash back and forth in my eyes. Feels like I'm going to have a seizure. Story 28. Sometimes I find myself contemplating the vastness of the universe and how small we humans are in comparison. In those moments, I come close to truly feeling that smallness, this terrifying and humbling insignificance. When the realization strikes me, even just a little, I feel a wave of fear wash over me. It's like standing at the edge of a mental cliff. Story 29. Boomers are walking toward me with a scowl on their faces. Working in customer service-based jobs will do that to you. Story 30. I tell myself to swallow several times in a row on command but struggle to do it. I feel trapped in the middle of a long drive-through line with no escape route available. I think about everyone I love scattered around and imagine the power grid going down, trying to figure out how I would communicate with them or get to them. Story 31. Watching people on television go into tight spaces makes me uncomfortable. I love historical documentaries, but I have to look away when they squeeze into confined areas, especially if they are crawling. Story 32. Going to a new place where it is unclear which door to use or where the door is, and knowing deep down that if I choose the wrong one or pull on a locked one, everyone inside will laugh and call me foolish. Story 33. Traveling and going through security requires preparation to ensure a smooth process for everyone. I make sure to take off any required items and have my boarding pass ready. I confirm whether I need to remove just my laptop or all electronics. I often notice others who seem to daydream while in line, waiting until they are at the security belt to start taking off items that should have been addressed much earlier. Story 34. Watching a rock climber free solo, Alex Honnold instilled in me a fear of heights just by watching that documentary. Story 35. I have anxiety when appliances or other items have been running for a long time, like when the refrigerator compressor won't stop running or the air conditioner. On road trips, I have to stop every couple of hours to let the car cool down. I get anxious that the appliances or car might overheat. Story 36. Sometimes I become very aware of my tongue, and then I start thinking I am going to swallow it, which makes it difficult for me to speak properly. It is quite distressing, and I am glad it happens only occasionally. Story 37. Having to get up to use the restroom when there are people next to me, like at the cinema or on a plane, makes me nervous. I think I rehearse my apologies in my head for so long that by the time I make my move, I feel like I'm about to lose control. Story 38. My neighbor has been playing the guitar for several years, which has caused me intense rage and anxiety whenever I hear an acoustic guitar. I have complained for years, but it never stops. Story 39. Sometimes, if congestion is affecting my breathing, I think I might die, which makes me anxious and worsens my breathing. Then, I remind myself that I'm overreacting and it's probably okay. Story 40. Stopping my car under a stoplight. I always fear it might fall from the pole or wire and crush me. Story 41. Not being able to use the urinal when someone stands directly next to me makes me feel uncomfortable as I am left standing there feeling exposed. Story 42. Hair clippers and other similar buzzing noises cause an unusual nervous spasm if they are close to my right ear. I have no idea why, but I have to force myself to sit still. It feels like the sound tickles intensely. This reaction occurs only if I hear it from very close and at a specific angle. I am unsure of the reason for this response. Story 43. Anything made of glass that gets broken in the same room as food can cause concern. Even if the glass is far away from the food, I worry that there are tiny, invisible shards in the food. Story 44. Oh no, oh God, here goes. If someone gives me directions to left or right, I do know, but if I'm put on the spot, I will invariably get it wrong. I've lost count of the times my husband has said to me, "No, darling, your other left." Story 45. Turning a corner in the grocery store, I was confronted by an autonomous robot that roams the store and cleans the floor. Story 46. The smell of liquor on people's breath is unforgettable. When I was a firefighter, I responded to the aftermath of a high-speed all-terrain vehicle collision. It was one of my first calls, and I will never forget the scent of alcohol mixed with blood that was everywhere. One of the individuals survived, but the other did not. Story 47. Court and heights. Even if I'm harnessed, I have worked trimming trees for years and on roofs for years. Story 48. Taking too long to start in a public bathroom and thinking that the people behind you are wondering, "What is taking so long? I need to use the restroom." Story 49. When you are writing something down and the person in front of you looks at you, even if it's just for a second, I start to forget what I wanted to write and how to form the words. I wonder if they think my handwriting is strange, and my hands often start shaking, which makes it even more challenging. Story 50. Sometimes I remember that I have toes, and I start wiggling them inside my work boots, and they feel trapped. It makes me feel claustrophobic. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so apparently this is some type of sensory issue. I don't like wearing shoes or socks. Story 51. Bumping into someone you barely know but are familiar enough with to acknowledge and engage in small talk. Story 52. When you start breathing heavily while climbing a flight of stairs. I assure you, I'm not inactive. Story 53. Uncomfortable silence at the dinner table, accented only by the faint clinking of silverware and swallowing sounds. Story 54. Today, I was out and felt warm. Then I became hyper-aware of the heat and started to sweat, thinking about how warm I was. I tried not to focus on being hot, but I continued sweating and felt gross and embarrassed. I made sure no one else looked overly warm or sweaty, which caused instant anxiety. Story 55. Small noises, such as people chewing with their mouths open and electric whirring. The anxiety of being late and the thought of it. Story 56. Chopping fruits and vegetables can be a challenge. If I feel like someone is watching me, I turn into a model trying to chop a cucumber. Story 57. Every once in a while, I hear a high-pitched frequency that matches the tone of my old pager from residency, which only went off when something serious was about to happen. Whenever I hear that sound, I can feel my heart rate and blood pressure momentarily increase before I remember that I no longer carry that pager and am not on call anymore. Story 58. Sadly, when I wake up, my dreams are so much better than my reality, and I realize this as soon as I open my eyes. Story 59. Groups of people. If I am in a store and see a lot of people in one aisle, I will come back so I do not have to deal with too many people. Story 60. Large swinging objects, like church bells. Don't ask me why, but if anyone can explain it to me, I would be eternally grateful. Story 61. When someone asks me to say something about myself, I don't know what to say, so please stop asking. Story 62. Wild birds can sometimes enter places where they are not supposed to be. An aviary is appropriate, but when wild birds fly into someone's house, garage, or business, it can be unsettling. Story 63. Walking into the kitchen with a cabinet open. I have this strange fear that I will trip and stumble at just the right angle to poke my eye on the corner of the cabinet door. My thoughts can be quite unusual. Story 64. When you need to go to the restroom at the cinema during a film, returning to your seat can be uncomfortable as other people might stare at you. Story 65. The scene in the animated Grinch when he is climbing down the chimney and wedges his body in an unusual position. Story 66. The sensation of feeling crushed can trigger a fight or flight response. When I worked as a dock loader, the hand loaders we used were motorized. If you did not maintain a good pace while pulling it from behind, it could run over your ankle. Story 67. Windmills, especially those in the middle of fields or alongside highways, can be quite intimidating. Story 68. When I am in a group and everyone starts laughing, I have no idea what is so funny. I feel like they are laughing at me. Story 69. 1. Sitting at a stoplight and wondering if the vehicle behind me will stop. Walking into public places and noticing people staring at me. Cloud to ground lightning strikes. Attractive women looking at me. These are a few things I experience as a 26-year-old male. Story 70. Not having music playing in a car, whether I am driving or a passenger, causes my anxiety to spike throughout the entire ride. I need the soothing background noise to feel calm. Story 71. When I face the person and they start to come toward me, or when I am in the checkout line and I have not memorized my speech yet, it can be challenging. Story 72. Seeing someone you know at the store while making eye contact with them, and you didn't even bother trying to look good. Story 73. Each time I realize my parents have passed away, I am reminded that I have no other family, which is a constant reminder that I am next. Story 74. 1. When I have to bag my groceries and there is someone behind me in line, having to make a reservation at a restaurant. I need to rehearse my lines, and I mess it up anyway. Having to parallel park with other people in the car. When someone includes me in their passive-aggressive conversation or asks me to take a side. When I see my talkative neighbor stepping out at the same time I need to step out, I quickly retrace my steps and wait. Story 75. Walking past someone triggers a train of thoughts like, am I walking awkwardly? Should I smile at them, ignore them, or look at my phone? Before I can make a decision, it's all over. Story 76. Even the thought of having to drive makes me very anxious, but luckily I never have to. However, just thinking about it makes me feel sick. Story 77. I will not be given specific instructions. I will not follow them if they are provided, but I know that I am doing the right thing. Story 78. Getting my blood drawn often makes me feel faint. I see purple spots and my heart races when it happens, which is quite alarming. Most phlebotomists are too busy to help me calm down during the process. I dislike it when blood work is required or when my doctor casually says, let's do some lab work. Go down the hall and take a right. The staff in the lab will take good care of you. It makes me consider finding a new doctor. Story 79. Leaving a store or building and walking on the sidewalk can be confusing, especially when you're outside and can't remember if you need to go left or right. You may find yourself standing there, looking around, feeling like everyone else knows the street except for you, and that they might be judging or laughing because you feel lost. Story 80. Driving next to a gasoline transport truck. I saw a video where one of those caught fire and exploded, affecting everything within a mile of it. Story 81. Turning a corner and walking next to someone in a hallway, or worse, a reflective surface where I see myself walking feels as if I just bought my body and only skimmed the instructions. I alternate between walking too casually like Shaggy or moving like a Thermian from Galaxy Quest, where my arms and legs are synchronized. Story 82. People being late makes me worry that they might be in an accident, and I will never see them again. Thank you. Story 83. Doors that creak need to produce a clear, robust click. Cannot be slow. The sound must be distinct. Story 84. Having people in line behind me always makes me feel like I need to go faster than humanly possible, whether it's paying, putting change away, or even waiting for my receipt. I really need to learn to breathe and take my time. Unorganized dishes in a sink make it difficult for me to start washing dishes unless I have everything stacked and organized in a way that makes sense. Walking in public makes me self-conscious. Am I walking weird? Do I look strange? Am I walking too slowly or too quickly? I dislike going out in public. Having someone watch me do anything is uncomfortable for me. I could go on. It feels like just existing is anxiety-inducing for me. Story 85. I'm concerned about my girlfriend's safety since she hasn't texted back. I understand she's busy. I recognize this stems from childhood trauma. Story 86. Having to talk to the ordering machine at a drive-thru made me anxious. I used to be too nervous to order food in person, but I eventually overcame that. However, when I tried a drive-thru, I felt strange talking to a machine. I became extremely nervous, and my friend had to order after I made mistakes twice. Story 87. Having to touch microfiber cloths for anything makes me uneasy. My patients and family use them, so even folding them gives me the chills. I am reminded of my rough hands as soon as I see one. Story 88. When in a public place, I dislike sitting with my back turned to the crowd where most people are. Story 89. Fences trigger a trauma response in me. I cannot look at them for too long, or it drives me insane. I just avoid staring at them. Story 90. Hearing people whistle. A very close second is people standing behind me while I'm getting a fountain soda at the gas station. Story 91. Balloons. I strongly dislike balloons. Anytime I go to a party where there are balloons, I feel anxious the entire time because I dread the sound when they pop. I don't know why it affects me. I have never been in combat or a victim of violence. Yet, just knowing that there are balloons that could pop at any moment keeps me on edge. When it inevitably happens, my immediate reaction is panic, and my anxiety increases knowing it can happen again. I don't ask anyone to remove balloons from their celebrations for my sake. I don't have the right, and honestly, I'm too embarrassed to share a fear that probably seems ridiculous to most people. Story 92. The number 9 makes me feel uneasy, except when it is 90. I am unsure why that is. Story 93. Anything in public or when I'm off duty that has the same frequency or sound as the emergency service tones makes my heart race. Additionally, the smell of blood or burnt hair triggers the same response. Story 94. When I drop something on the floor and it lands under another object, my hand gets a little jittery trying to find it and pick it up. Story 95. Going through the car wash, I had to shift my car into drive before the vehicle behind me collided with mine. The 2016 Jeep Grand Cherokee has a strange shifter that remains stationary. Story 96. The way one of my coworkers laughs reminds me of my experiences in middle school, particularly the bullying. Story 97. Being too full gives me a lot of anxiety. I feel like my stomach is pressing on my lungs, making it hard to breathe. Being overly full feels unpleasant overall. Story 98. Driving over large bridges spanning bodies of water makes me anxious. I can handle bridges over land, but the sight of vast water triggers a feeling of anxiety. I've learned to manage this anxiety without needing to pull off the road after crossing a bridge. To add a touch of humor, I also dislike the sun and burn easily. I find overwhelming garlic flavor unappealing. I never enter someone's house without an explicit invitation. Once, a church inadvertently splashed holy water on me, and another time, my blood pressure reading was 0. Maybe I'm a vampire and don't realize it, but either way, it's an interesting thought. Story 99. Deciding where to eat involves more than just my preferences. For example, if a group of friends wants to get dinner and they ask me to pick the restaurant, I immediately panic that I will choose a place that others won't enjoy. Story 100. My gas gauge is getting dangerously close to empty, and if the gas light actually illuminates, I can't even. I'm stressed just thinking about it right now. Story 101. Drive-thrus that have someone standing outside to take your order defeat the purpose of using a drive-thru instead of going inside. I get instant anxiety and forget my order. If it's a mobile order, I even forget my name. They really need to go back to the speaker system. Story 102. When I hear the standard Apple ringtone, I remember my time as a team leader. I had an old iPhone, and people only called when something was wrong. Story 103. When people start singing a cappella, bursting into song without musical accompaniment for no reason, I get goosebumps when I hear good music I like. However, there's something about suddenly hearing singing, even if it's good, when I'm not expecting it that sets me on edge. A bride once did this during her wedding as a surprise to the groom, and I almost had to leave. I have no idea why I feel such a strong negative reaction to it, as I usually love singing. I also unreasonably dislike people chewing and making mouth noises, so maybe it's related to that somehow. Story 104. When there is loud, uninterrupted noise that I cannot control or walk away from, it becomes difficult for me. During my 9 years on dialysis, some patients would blast their music, laptops, DVD players, or televisions, which would instantly make me angry and filled with anxiety. Although I have not undergone treatment in nearly 12 years, I still have the same reaction to noise. Fortunately, I live in a mostly quiet complex, so most of my days are peaceful. It especially makes driving uncomfortable when individuals with decent sound systems feel the need to share their music with everyone else. It is infuriating. Story 105. When a truck drives by and I'm walking, the sound of it, the loudness, and the low rumble make me anxious or at least uncomfortable. I have to cover my ears and close my eyes. Sometimes I hold my breath because it smells bad. It's as if I have to brace myself every time. Story 106. Being behind someone at Walmart or the grocery store who is on their phone irritates me. Story 107. People are watching me work on tasks despite not having a clue what I am doing, and there is something else they are supposed to be doing. Story 108. Traveling can be challenging for me, as I often struggle to sleep well when I'm not in my own bed. Sometimes I can barely manage a few hours of sleep each day. By the time I return from vacation, I need to sleep for an entire day just to recuperate. Story 109. The smell of office soap in doctors' clinics is overwhelming. Whenever I encounter it, I feel an urge to leave the room. My son was medically fragile during his first 6 months of life, and we experienced 6 weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit, along with multiple hospital stays. I have post-traumatic stress disorder as a result. It genuinely raises my blood pressure to smell that soap. Story 110. When I have to sneeze while driving on a highway, it feels like in that split second of closing my eyes, the car could flip, and I would be responsible for a 20-car pileup. Story 111. Walking to my car while holding a pizza from the store, I feel like everyone in their cars is watching, thinking it's pizza night at my house. It's quite upsetting making that grand march to the car. Story 112. I am breaking my usual pattern when walking home. I have a specific route I take, including a specific point where I cross the street. It doesn't feel right if I don't follow the same path. Story 113. I am checking my email. There are many reasons for this. Bills and unexpected bills. Do you wish to send me a bill? I dislike my front porch and mailbox now. Story 114. Being in a situation where I am supposed to mingle professionally, I do not want to talk to anyone. I can, and I am not nervous in the slightest. It is just the insincerity of it all. Story 115. When I'm up at night before a social event, I can't sleep because I feel anxious. I start overthinking until I eventually fall asleep from exhaustion. Story 116. When someone is standing very close to me in line, it sometimes feels like the person behind me is breathing down my neck, causing me to feel instant chills. Story 117. Audible ringtones and message tones. I worked 7 years as a security call center operator. When those phones rang, it was never good news. For years, a ringing phone would make me jump. Now, it has just settled into anxiety. All the phones I own are permanently silent. Story 118. Native Americans were pushed off their lands and forced to attend boarding schools to erase their language and culture. This was funded by the federal government, and the schools were run by Catholic nuns. In one school in Canada, 213 dead children were found in the yard. This situation causes me anxiety because my mother was the last person in our family to be forced to attend a boarding school. The trauma led to her addiction and she died from AIDS. Story 119. I have obsessive-compulsive disorder, and the main issues are 1. Objects constantly in motion, such as ceiling fans spinning too quickly and light bulbs left on. Climate change, including the rise in average global temperatures and increasing pollutants. The positive feedback loop of melting ice contributes to the rapid release of carbon and methane gases. Story 120. The fact that I can comment on nearly everyone else's parent comment is making me realize I might have anxiety. Story 121. The show The Office served as a coping mechanism for me during a very difficult and traumatic period in my life. Although that time is thankfully behind me, I find that I cannot watch The Office anymore, as it brings back so many memories of that era. I also dislike seeing pictures or clips from the show. Story 122. Cars driving past me while I'm walking always puts me on edge for some reason. It's as if I think they might do something, but I'm not sure what. I often go out of my way and take side streets to avoid the congestion of cars. Story 123. When you focus on your breathing and it feels like you're not breathing properly, it becomes difficult to shift your attention away from it. Story 124. All three of my children asked me to do something for them at the exact same time and then screamed and had meltdowns when I became overstimulated and couldn't respond to any of their requests. Story 125. I am drinking coffee, even though I know it will make me anxious until I fall asleep and reset my system. Story 126. Cleaning the lint trap in my dryer gives me the biggest feeling of discomfort, so I have to hit it on the trash can to knock it off. Story 127. When my prepackaged speech for ordering food is interrupted by a random question or distraction, I need to quickly remember how to place an order. Story 128. When my grade gets updated and I receive a notification saying, "Your chemistry grade has been released," I dislike it. Story 129. Paying for items at a register with cash and holding up the line because the cashier had to count out my change since I couldn't pay the exact amount with cash. Additionally, going through fast food drive-thrus and talking to the voice on the menu. I no longer do either of those. Story 130. Bowling can be intimidating. Not knowing your shoe size, the slippery lanes, and the pressure of people watching can make it even more stressful. What if you get a gutter ball? You have to walk back to your spot afterward, and it can feel like a nightmare. Story 131. I have a phobia of my wrists being cut or burst open. I blame the movie The Fly. Remembering that I have wrists is a 15 to 30-minute nausea-filled exercise for me. Hooray! I am now aware of my wrists. Thank you. Story 132. The night before I return to work after my days off. I don't dislike my job. It's an existential crisis type of thing. Is this all there is, forever working and then not working and then repeating? Story 133. Someone is looking over my shoulder at what I'm doing. My boyfriend really loves watching others play video games and often puts his down to watch mine, which oddly makes me feel uncomfortable for no good reason. He's genuinely just interested in what I'm doing, but being observed makes me feel strange. The same goes for online window shopping. He makes positive comments like, "That dress would look great on you. What a cool shade of nail polish. Oh, that game looks fun. And whoa, crazy book cover, what's that about?" It's all super positive reinforcement and shows me he's interested in what I like, but I still feel oddly uneasy about it. I think I'm too used to being made to feel that my interests, aesthetics, and hobbies are unworthy, and I don't know how to process genuine and sincere interest. Story 134. When I walk upstairs and suddenly forget how to do it, I have to stop thinking about walking before I start again. Story 135. Thinking about the deep ocean and all the creatures within, known and unknown to us, gives me the heebie-jeebies. Story 136. People are walking around my office at work. I am waiting in line at a grocery store self-checkout. When I receive a text or message from someone that only says, "Hello," attending a bar or yoga class where it's extra crowded, I have to be near someone and worry about whether I will hit them the entire class. I am going to the mall. Just existing. Story 137. Walking back to your seat after using the restroom on an airplane is always a walk of shame, as everyone looks at you. You know that they know you have been in there for over 10 minutes, and it doesn't take that long to go to the bathroom. Story 138. When I am driving and see a small dip in the asphalt ahead, I suddenly become convinced that a sinkhole will open up as I drive over that spot. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.